most great founders have a very clear spike. They are not great at everything, but they're really great at something, and then they leverage that. So that's number one. Number two is they have a ton of drive. And drive is very different, I think, from passion. I think passion is important. It's great with passionate people, but we all know a lot of passionate people who never get anything done. So passion in itself is not enough. Drive is more, yes, you're passionate, but you also have that combined with raw ambition and the ability to execute. So can you see that people have moved things forward in the past, achieved different things, hit milestones, and are they really ambitious about solving an important problem and doing something really big? So that's number two. And number three is grit. Right? Great founders never give up. Right? They just keep on hammering.
Absolutely. We're not looking to use AI to replace lawyers. I mean, lots of fun and games in the press about that, right? New technology like this comes out and our knee-jerk reaction is to go full force and just, replace all lawyers. No, it's not going to work. But there's a whole bunch of high volume, low value, repetitive work that lawyers do every single day of the week.
We had a really deep conversation one day and say, well, what do we do if one day, let's say social media dropped off the face of the earth? Like, how do we remain a real legacy business and continue to have the impact that we have? And I mentioned it before, it's one of the things that still to this day, it doesn't matter what time or when we read them, when we see the impact that our work has had for a person, I get the same butterflies in the stomach and the same feeling of like, this is the reason why, this is our purpose, and I feel as though a lot of my purpose to be able to do this.
And the COVID hit. And
yes.
Yeah, I don't think it will happen. Like one day when there's a digital human who could be very lifelike, very intelligent conversations, and it could be agentic. The digital human interface that we're building could enable a lot of automations in just one screen, right?
Hi everyone, welcome to AI Edge. This is Neha Mittal, Director for Digital Natives at Microsoft Asia. And with me today, I have the privilege of welcoming Rohit Agarwal, MD for Peak 15. Welcome, Rohit.
Thank you for having me, Neha. Thank you.
Rohit, it's such a pleasure to have you. And I've been following Peak 15 for a very long time. It's one of those aspirational venture capitalists every startup wants to work with in Asia. And having been a founder myself, it's a privilege to welcome you here and, getting to know more about, how you think and what drives you and Peak 15 as well. So thank you so much. Rohit, why don't we start with your journey, your personal journey of how you became passionate about technology, about investing, about startups. Would love to hear.
I heard about it on a podcast. Well, no, I wish. But, growing up in India, I think I did all the usual things that you would expect, went to IIT and then was surrounded by a lot of smart people. It was 2010, 2011. Startups was just starting to emerge as a option for people in colleges and graduating. So I started up while I was in my last year of college. And those were the days when people were building first generation internet companies. So a lot of it was just compiling information on the internet. So I don't know why, but I ended up choosing to build online classifieds for lawyers and chartered accountants and so on. It was called Law Connect. I mean, literally that creative. That's how my sort of startup journey started, really. And I then did it full time. We built a small team and, really did it for about a year and a half, 2 years full time. And then we realized that, it wasn't scaling. We were not able to raise funds for it and so on and so forth. So it shut down. Then I went on and joined some of my friends that were building another classifieds in India, a real estate classifieds called housing.com. And I joined there, when it was still a very small team. And those were all sort of people from my class, and we'd all sort of grown up in the same hostel. So I really knew the team very well. And the idea was that I'd go kind of help them out for a few months before I kind of figure out what I want to do next. But one thing led to the other, and it was 2 years before, housing had really grown to 2,000 plus people in India. It was a very hot startup back then.
At that time, yeah.
And then almost serendipitously, I one day logged into my LinkedIn because I was trying to hire someone who's not responding and so on. And I saw a message there from a recruiter. It's been sort of 4 or 5 months old by that point, saying someone from a VC wants to speak to you and so on. And I thought like maybe it's a wrong destination or so on, because back then majority of the folks going into VCs were typically from consulting and investment banking and so on. But nevertheless, I mean, again, as a founder and someone who's sort of grown up looking for opportunities, always interested to find out what's behind the door. So I replied, and I went and had some conversations, and I just fell in love with the people I met at what was then back Sequoia. I met the team, and I felt, wow, this is really cool. And given I had sort of failed as an entrepreneur to raise funds in my own startup idea, I thought this would be a very nice training ground. So that kind of was the itch for me to scratch, saying, let me go. I anyways will probably go do a startup again. So why don't I go spend a couple of years at a VC, get to know this ecosystem, get to know this side of the world a little bit better. And yeah, it's been 10 years.
Your story, my story is a bit similar in that sense. So I joined Microsoft from my B2B SaaS startup for learning how large enterprises work. And now I'm here for 8 years. So
Wonderful. I think that's also a
similar.
little bit of thing with when you fall in good company and, good
People
good
around,
problems to solve.
Yes.
So I think, time passes by.
Absolutely. Thanks for sharing that, Rohit. I think super inspirational to see the various things. And I think the learning is just to experiment and keep an open mind. You never know what you like till you actually try it. So nice to see that. And as you have been investing in various startups for the last 10 years, what's the Asia opportunity today that you see? And in that context, what's the investment thesis you have?
Look, we are still by every means of metric very early in the entrepreneurial journey within India, within Southeast Asia, and broadly in technology. I think there are lots of metrics, whether it be kind of, what percentage of commerce is digitized or what percentage of market cap in our markets belongs to technology companies or VC-backed companies. It's currently at 2-3% or single digits across most of the markets in Asia. Whereas if you look at markets like US, etc., it's well above 40%.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
So there is a lot of market cap that's yet to kind of get created, and lots of value to yet be captured by technology companies in our markets. But I think the fundamental shift between, say, 2015 when I started or now, or 2005 when really VC and tech started to take off in our part of the world, and now is that we as a ecosystem, as a market, are far more ready to adopt technology. I think, 2005 when the first sort of web startups took off, I mean, this part of the world had probably maybe 50 to 100 million internet users, most of them on low speed dial-up connections.
Desktops,
And, maybe most of these economies, the large economies, India, Vietnam, Indonesia, were all sort of $1,500, $2,000 GDP per capita or lesser. I think that today, fast forward to today, is over 1.5 billion internet users.
Yeah.
All of them not just online, but connected with smart devices. Lots of digital footprint. They're connected with their bank wallets and so on and so forth. So they're transacting users, as in they can consume digitally versus just sort of search and navigate digitally. I think that's the big change, if you will, for both businesses that are building for businesses that serve to these customers or those that are building direct to consumer startups. I think the other big shift that has happened is just the number of developers in our ecosystem. I think today we have 20 million developers across India and Southeast Asia. That's a big number. That's gone up more than 10x in just the last decade. What that means is that today, especially in the context of AI, there is a lot of product and technology being built just for this developer ecosystem. Majority of the enterprise SaaS and the developer tool ecosystem has been built around the US in the past decade or so, because that's where majority of the developers were. So if you're building a database startup, or if you're building a search, or if you're building all these picks and shovel tools, I think now you really have a market in Asia for these kinds of products. So I think those are the two big shifts. One, just the number of online users and second, the developer ecosystem in our part of the world.
Very interesting. No, I completely resonate that, and I think what's also happened is that the whole digital payments ecosystem has made the business models a lot more varied. Earlier, the classifieds and all you could do was ads, basically, right? Because there was no way to transact, and now with the digital economy across Asia booming. In fact, I would say it somehow leapfrogged a lot of the Western or previous, economies that had already become digitized, but in the credit card and other modes. We've actually leapfrogged and we've sort of moved ahead. A lot of people don't have credit cards, but they can do like a Paytm or some sort of a transaction digitally. So I think that's really opened up new business models as well. So thanks Rohit for summarizing, and really, really good to see as well. And the fact that a lot of startups are actually leveraging that, and you see that happening. What's the in that context, what's your investment thesis or philosophy as Peak 15 as you look at these startups building new business models?
AI is suddenly, like, the last 12-18 months become very hot, and it's sort of dizzying almost if you visit US and Silicon Valley in terms of just the pace at which innovation is happening in the space. But at Peak 15, we've been investing in intelligent software, which was sort of 10 years back all called machine learning startups, for a long time. And in fact, our first investment in Southeast Asia was a company called Appier, which helped marketers kind of more intelligently target their audience, improve their ad spends, and so on and so forth. And that is a startup which we backed in 2014. It was a team of 2 PhDs building this smart machine learning software that understood audiences the way AI would today. And that startup has now grown to over $200 million in revenues. It serves a lot of the world's largest enterprises and has gone public in Japan on Tokyo Stock Exchange. It's listed. So I think we have had these journeys for quite some time. I've personally been involved in a company called Insider, which is again machine learning software that helps marketers. And we backed it in Singapore in 2017, 2018 when it was roughly $4-5 million. Now it's over $150 million in revenue and so on. So I think we've seen these companies for quite some time. But overall at Peak 15, we've got 70 plus startups which are truly AI or software startups that leverage AI in a meaningful way. And 70% of these have come about in the last 3 years. So we are very actively investing in AI startups. And I think there are 3 big themes along which a lot of these startups are building. I think one is there is a vision that these founders have of the enterprise of the future, on what the enterprise of the future would look like if software starts to write software and software starts to sell software. So there are a lot of agentic frameworks evolving and emerging where people are building intelligent workers for enterprises, whether it be in sales, BDR, whether it be in coding, whether it be in QA, whether it be in lots of other use cases. But I think people are building lots of intelligent workers for the enterprises of the future. That is one big theme in which we are seeing. The second is, I think, a lot of, especially in our context in Southeast Asia, India, there's been a big BPO industry which has processed a lot of the mid and back office work for large enterprises. I think that has traditionally been very labor intensive. And there's always been software to enhance productivity, but today we are at a point where a lot of this can be fully automated. And whether it be, say, something like the US healthcare industry, which is $5 trillion and $1 trillion of spend is on admin work and back office work, a lot of that is being addressed, and especially by startups in our part of the world, because they're closer to the customers, these organizations that currently do this work and can go and kind of solve problems while being here in Asia. And I think the third big theme is I spoke about the 20 million developers. That's a big theme. I think
Focusing on developer productivity.
focusing on developer productivity, focusing on enhancing the build experience for developers, especially those that are building for AI.
I specifically get excited when I hear the third one, especially with all the talk around in India, especially the talk around deep tech versus retail oriented industry. I think it's really great to see, and I agree with you. There's a lot of work happening on the developer productivity, how to enhance development overall, the software cycle. On the first one, before I move on, you and I were chatting earlier, so I would love for you to also share how do you see enterprises of the future differing? Because you and I spoke about how maybe the traditional enterprises and the new enterprises will be perhaps differently set up post AI world.
I think the difference is likely more to be just the mindset of the founders who are sort of driving the wheel at these companies. I think I don't know how large enterprises like Microsoft or the big banks, etc., would evolve to adapt AI in the future. I think they will adapt AI in a big way, but it will likely be a slower adoption curve. But what we are seeing is that a lot of new startups today, they are building with AI native workflows. They are building AI native processes in their companies. And as a result, they are far more efficient, both in terms of capital as well as in terms of people. So I think the typical cycle for a startup was you build product, you go sell that product, that gets you revenue, or you raise capital funding, etc., to then hire more people, sell more, and that was the typical sort of scale-up journey. I think many startups are now seeing an opportunity to break out of that, especially because they can write software, which can write more software and that can sell more software. So they don't need to necessarily hire people or raise capital. All those gating factors and barriers are coming down very materially. And as a result, you're seeing startups which have terrific product market fit. We're seeing for the first time sort of enterprise AI startups go from 0 to 100 million in 12 months.
Wow. The development cycle is faster.
I mean, the development cycle is faster. The sales cycle is much shorter. There's a lot of, and this happens pretty much in every wave of new technology shift. The enterprises are far more ready to adopt these solutions, and there's a lot more appetite and budget today, because it's a new area.
It's a new, and they are also experimenting with startups to see what is the art of possible, which probably wasn't the case 15 years ago, right?
Correct.
That's super insightful. And, again, reflecting on our own journey, I added, semiconductor startup, and hiring was the biggest top of mind. How do you hire good talent? And a lot of times we were all based in certain cities because the talent was only available in those cities like Bangalore in India or Noida or some of these other places in South Asia. So I think that probably is also going to change. Where do you think more startups will be distributed across other cities now that the development cycle can be automated a lot more with tools?
Over the last 5 years, probably 50% or more of all startups we have bagged have had distributed teams. And I think it was already starting to happen.
COVID,
It was already starting to happen pre-pandemic, but it was sort of a little bit more limited to sales and marketing teams were distributed, but development teams were all in one center so that they could all collaborate and build together and so on. But I think pandemic really accelerated the distributed teams, shift to distributed teams. I mean, lots of people started working from home, and therefore any reminiscence of co-location sort of blurred away even further, because people were like, hey, even if I'm in the same city, I'm not coming into the office and I'm working on Zoom. So we need to invest enough such that people can work remotely. And I think today, both because talent is sort of more democratized and you could find a wonderful developer or a designer for your product, for your category in Sydney or London or New York, and you don't want to settle for someone who cannot just physically be there but are the best fit for that role. So I think founders, companies, they've all invested a lot in the last 2, 3, 4 years in readying themselves for distributed teams. And now with the AI, I think that's only gonna
going
for
up.
further.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. I do see AI accelerating that journey, which you rightly said started in the pandemic. If I ask you to reflect on your journey and your decisions on investments, it's always, been, whenever I've asked VCs, they always say people is what they invest, business ideas come next. So in that context, firstly, would you agree with that? Like, is that your philosophy as well?
It's a very big part of investment decision, a little bit more tied to the stage at which you're investing. I think if you're investing very early stage, honestly, the only thing to underwrite is the team.
Right.
But then as you kind of go along, there are a lot more indicators available. But I would still think that people plays a very big part, very, very big part in terms of who you want to partner with. Also because, look, the reason why people say people is important is because a VC investment is typically a 8-10 year journey. In that 8-10 year journey, lots of things will change. Competition will emerge, markets will change, new technologies would emerge, and so on and so forth. So I think what you're sort of backing is a founder who can adapt to these changes and continue to be ahead of the curve. And which is what manifests in saying people is the most important thing we back.
In Microsoft, we call it the growth mindset.
Yeah.
Just how do you pivot quickly if you're not seeing the success that you want to see? No, absolutely agree with you. And in that context, what and you said founder, but do you think like the entire team nowadays, especially, I mean, not just nowadays, but last 4-5 years, I've seen it's not one founder, right? Like mostly it's like a bunch of 3, 4, 5 sometimes co-founders basically that come together. So what are those qualities that you look for in that team, that early stage startup that give you that confidence that yes, I want that 8-10 year journey with these?
I was having this conversation with a founder, and he was the first one to explain to me, saying that, look, whatever we call product or service or proposition is essentially a promise to a customer. I think customers don't think of products necessarily in terms of needs that they address. They think of it in terms of promises that the company has made, whether it be, I can find something on an Amazon, or, I can find something on Google, or, all the good brands around the world, they stand for a promise to their customers. And I think the best founders very clearly know what their promise is to their customers. And they win by saying that I'll keep that promise more number of times than anybody else. Which means I'll keep delivering on that product proposition that I stand for and fulfilling that need for my customers sort of with obsession and with accuracy better than anybody else. And that's why you'll see a lot of the best founders are far more focused on their own product, their own journey, and a little bit less concerned about competition, about all the shifts that are happening in the market, pricing, and so on and so forth, because they think like, look, eventually customers will choose whoever keeps that promise with consistency, with accuracy, with quality, maximum number of times.
Very interesting. Yeah.
And so I think a lot of the founders that I see, whether it be a B2B company, whether it be a B2C company, I think they're absolutely clear. What is my promise to my customer? What does my customer trust me for? And how can I make sure that I always deliver on that trust whenever our customers need it? And they keep building their products, they keep building their propositions, they keep expanding their product around that one simple promise.
Interesting.
So I think having that clarity in the early days helps you then kind of get the second, third order things, whether it be what is the kind of talent you hire, what is the kind of what do you prioritize, how do you go about expanding your journey, whether it be in terms of product expansion or geo expansion. I think a lot of things start becoming clear. So I think that is one. I think the second thing is that, look, eventually we have all kinds of founders, those that are obsessed about product, those that are obsessed about customers, those that are obsessed about, all the different aspects of business. Some are obsessed about brand and so on and so forth. But we think that from the very early days, once you've nailed this promise, I think the founders that scale best are those that are obsessed about performance, and they have clarity on what is the metric of performance that matters to my business in the very long run. Sometimes it's a financial metric, sometimes it's a product metric, sometimes it's a user metric, but they have again that clarity on what are the one or two metrics to really optimize for. And again, all product decisions, all sales, the whole organization is engineered like a spear or a tip of the arrow to just focus on those one or two metrics. And then you can drive that with intensity, with clarity, and can scale in a sort of what from the outside may very much still appear like chaotic and so on and so forth, but you're sort of gliding it with some degree of efficiency.
I think that resonated a lot, especially in today's world where things are changing so fast, and not just the AI and the technological innovation, but also the geopolitical situation and, the overall, environment or ecosystem in which startups are operating is really dynamic.
I think many of us have seen this chart, especially if you've been to some VC and founder events, that, only very few of the companies that were in the Fortune 500s from the 1960s still stayed relevant in the 90s, and perhaps fewer even now. But actually, an interesting stat that we recently came across was that only 1% of all listed companies in the US have accounted for something like 80% of the profits over the last 50 years. So this is, even when you've made it, you're a large enterprise, you're listed in the US, even then, actually the task to stay relevant and to stay on the top is very, very hard. If you will look at those 1% companies, there are of course the Apples and the Nikes and the McDonald's and so on and so forth. And I think they all come down to this sort of obsession with what is their customer promise.
Yeah.
And staying true to that with every product, with every cycle of technology and so on and so forth.
What is that one or two things you're obsessed about as a founder in terms of outcomes that you would like to see? It could be product, it could be metrics, it could be anything. And then ensure you rally your troops against that aim or that obsession or objective. And then no matter how the world is changing around you, that's your focus, right? And then you ensure that you don't lose that focus as things change, but of course adapt and adapt your how you reach those aims as well.
And I think that's a very good point, because I think the AI today, we have a lot of founders, and many of them are searching for how can they adopt AI in their businesses, especially if they're not necessarily a AI native startup, and they're kind of all looking at adopting and weaving AI into their customer offerings and into their solutions and so on. And I think our advice, at least to a lot of them, is don't focus on AI. Focus on your customer.
Absolutely.
Focus on what they want and see how AI can do it better. Because if you start
bang on,
start with AI,
yeah,
then you have like the whole menu of AI offerings, and you're looking. It's a little bit of a looking for a solution, looking for a problem.
Absolutely. I 100% agree with that, because as I work with startups, I see both type of startups. The startups that first start with the business problem and then see what can solve it, and then AI is one of the tools, and especially if they've not been able to solve it till now, then you start introducing AI to see, can AI solve that problem as well, rather than saying, hey, I have AI now, where do I use this? Because that's not sustainable, honestly, because then you can never really get the right answer to the overall objective that we spoke about, that every startup should have. So great advice. I think bang on, and I totally resonate with that as well. So, hey, thanks, Rohit. I think it's been amazing talking to you and getting to know both your journey and you know how you're seeing Asia shape up in this new world of AI, and how you're seeing founders cope with that, and the advice you just gave aspiring founders on how they should navigate the changing world. So thank you so much for your time. Really appreciated it and loved the conversation.
Thank you, Neha. It was wonderful to be here, and we are very excited about the journey that founders will have in this new AI wave in Asia. I think it's just going to be exponential.
Amazing. Yeah. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.